Hello, I'm Ernie Humphrey, the CEO and founder of 360 Thought Leadership Consulting. I'd like to welcome everyone to my course, World-Class Treasury Management, a Battle Plan for Success. The entire paradigm of treasury management has changed over the past few years from a focus on back-office operational efficiency to being a strategic partner across the enterprise. In this course, I will focus on how Treasury professionals can stay ahead of the curve in terms of current and emerging responsibilities in the arena of Treasury, and understanding how they can access the professional resources they need to succeed in any environment. Let's take a look at the specific learning objectives for the course. These define my promise to you in terms of specific takeaways in taking your valuable time to experience this course. First, after listening to the course, you'll be able to identify the components of your battle plan for treasury management success. You'll be able to excel in areas that will never change in the realm of treasury management. Understand how to excel in areas that are changing in the realm of treasury management, and discover how to excel in areas that are on the horizon in the realm of treasury management. How am I going to accomplish my objectives for this course? Well, let's take a look at our specific agenda. I'm going to review how to construct the battle plan for treasury success. I'm going to talk about timeless treasury tasks, relevant trends, and best practices. Then we're going to shift gears to emerging treasury tasks and relevant trends. Then we're going to move on to treasury tasks on the horizon and best practices. Then I'm going to shift gears to educate you as to how to perform a professional resource gap analysis, and then how to identify and acquire the resources you need to cost effectively fill those professional gaps that you might have. Then I'm going to wrap things up with some final thoughts. Before I get into the meat of the course, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on a background in terms of success. First, a quote that I happen to personally like, and then also just my ABCs of success. So these can be used within and beyond Treasury. Just as life is what you make of it, success is how you define it. Success is not a thing, and it is not a finish line. It is a state of mind. I keep this in mind in terms of my professional success, personal success, and you can keep this in mind in terms of Treasury success as well. There's not going to be a finish line in terms of Treasury success. It needs to be evolving. You need to keep moving that finish line. You need to keep running through that finish line. Because Treasury keeps on evolving at such a rapid pace, you need to be able to move that goal line and run across that at full speed. So in terms of my ABCs of success, I look at them in terms of people. They're your most valuable assets. If you're working right now, it's your internal team, your consultants, and also your professional network. In many cases, your professional network can be the most valuable, especially in terms of Treasury professionals. If you can connect with peers that are they're facing the same challenges you're facing, those can be the most valuable assets that you can have in driving your career success. You need to look at things in terms of process. In my opinion, in order to effectively manage anything, you need to have well-defined and efficient processes, and that's especially the case if you're working at a growing company and you're going to need to scale up things in terms of payments or anything else related to treasury management. And then communication is key, especially in terms of treasury. You need to be able to earn buy-in for any investments relevant to treasury by effectively communicating value effectively with passion. So you're going to need to win buy-in. A lot of times when people hear you want to invest in treasury technology, professional development, it might not be an easy sell on the surface, but if you learn how to effectively build and communicate a business case, you will be able to win that buy-in and drive your own career success. Collaboration, there is no I in success, and this is especially true in the realm of Treasury. In Treasury, we often have to interact successfully with departments across the enterprise, so the better you are at collaborating, the more successful you're going to be. And then along the same lines, we have alignment. You can't effectively do anything in Treasury if you're managing things in silos that impact departments across the enterprise. And then finally, in terms of technology, it's not magic. It can be a key for efficiency and can fuel success, but it's not magic. So whenever I come to obstacles in reaching my goals, I kind of take a step back and maybe even take a look at this slide. And if I look at areas where I can improve in terms of people, process, communication, collaboration, alignment, or technology, there's never been a case that I haven't been able to overcome an obstacle by looking in each of these 6 key areas and defining the problems and my ways forward and addressing any obstacles that I eventually turn into opportunities. So in terms of a battle plan for Treasury success, at a Treasury leadership level, you want to define your department's mission statement, and that defines what success means to your Treasury department. So you can take this down on a personal level. So what does success in Treasury mean to you? And then in both cases, you want to define near-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, whether those they're departmental, personal goals, things you want to accomplish in your Treasury department, efficiencies, collaboration, projects you want to take on. You want to perform a department or personal assessment in terms of a gap analysis between current responsibilities and the relevant current skill set. So this is really key. So you need to understand how Treasury is transforming, and you need to look at your skill set versus the skills you need to be successful. And on a team perspective, what you want to do is make sure that your team has a well-rounded skill set to really deliver on all your different responsibilities that are going to be coming your way. So you want to, on the team level, you want a portfolio of the skills you need. On a personal level, you want to develop skills in each of these areas, and you want to focus in terms of areas where you can set yourself apart from your peers, not only within your company, but in terms of the Treasury profession in general. And I'll talk about some areas where you might want to invest in developing your skill set. Just to preview, in terms of analytical skills, those are going to be key. The ability to manage and interpret data, I guess that's ancillary to analytical skills, and the soft skills are key, being able to communicate effectively, verbally, written, and also the ability to explain financial results and things of that nature to non-financial professionals is key. And then after we're able to identify some gaps that you might have, you want to define a strategy to fill the gaps where needed. So in today's world, there are many resources that are free or they're very cost effective. So we'll talk about different ways to fill knowledge gaps that you might have, and also to prioritize those gaps as well. And so in terms of filling the gaps, you might also want to take the perspective of near-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. And this personally works very well for me. You want to see and define what you think are inherent barriers in achieving your goals, and with your employees as well, if you're a Treasury leader, and then assess which factors are perceived and which are real. So many times, if you can write these down, many times your inherent barriers will be perceived and they're not real, so you can knock those down out of the gate. And in terms of achieving goals, a lot of times when you knock down inherent barriers, the path you take is much easier to navigate. So I like to look at inherent barriers in terms of people, process, and technology. And then I see, especially in terms of people, if I have people that don't play well with others, then I always try and get those people on board, or somehow figure out with others who might know them well how to get them to engage and be productive and be a member of a team in achieving departmental goals. And then you need to define what you need in terms of the resources to meet and exceed your goals. Goes along with the previous few bullet points. And it's key in terms of the resources you need. You need to be able to get creative and be able to access the resources, as many as possible, for free. And we'll talk about how you might do that. And then you need to be able to define the ROI to filling that resource gap to your Treasury team, but also to your company in terms of short-term and long-term ROI. And then you want to be able to communicate that ROI. So how fantastic is it going to be to say, I want to get more versed in my analytical abilities. I took courses XYZ, and these are the accomplishments that I was able to deliver to the department in terms of that. So let's say, for example, I was able to improve cash forecasting in 2016, and in terms of improving that process, I saved us from borrowing $2 million, and that saved us XYZ in borrowing costs. So to put some numbers behind there. So I like to define success in terms of dimensions, and I call them dynamic because I believe they're constantly changing. So what I do is I've got my little puzzle pieces here, and I'll talk about which of these puzzle pieces I see as core, which are emerging, and which are kind of a little bit on the horizon. At the end of the day, it's still the perception, and I think it's still the case, that cash management sits at the center. That will never change. You can call it cash management. You can call it working capital management. Cash management is a piece of working capital management. At the end of the day, we have to have the money on hand for the company to execute its strategic initiatives. It can, period. And then related to cash management, obviously accounts receivable, when we're getting that money, and how effectively. Accounts payable, are we allocating those resources? So if we look at cash management, AR and AP, that could be couched as working capital management. And it's been very interesting to me over the past year or so how much more attention has been paid to accounts payable. So I think it's great. There's more of a focus on the cash conversion cycle. Yes, we want to get our money in as soon as possible, but on the payment side, there's a lot of good that we can do in terms of supplier relationship management, mitigating payments cost, and making payments in terms of how payments are made. So we'll get into that a little bit later. And then we have relationship management, bank relationship management. We talked a little bit about that. And then managing relationships across the enterprise. We've got corporate governance, really emerging area, FP&A. We've got mergers and acquisitions, investor relations. We've got IT services management. So as companies transition more to cloud-based services, so the applications available in the cloud for all aspects of treasury and risk management are truly amazing, and you can take the management of those services in-house and not rely so heavily on IT. How nice would that be to not have to go to IT for a bunch of requests, and then you can engage them in the process, and as you do so, you make their lives easier, and you build that mutually beneficial relationship with IT, which is invaluable. And then we have risk management, of course. Maybe that should be a little bit closer. Traditionally, we've been focused on financial risk management, and we're being tasked more and more to be involved in enterprise risk management, which is great because Treasury really has a knowledge of the whole business that few individuals have. Maybe the CEO, and if you have a good CFO, but other than that, Treasury has a really good handle on the business and the risks that we face. And then below that, this is becoming more and more important, personnel professional development. So if you happen to be a manager, what we're seeing in terms of company value now, it's finally being defined in terms of employee engagement, employee productivity, and also customer engagement. So as those things change, I guess the ownership is coming more to Treasury, which I think is great, instead of relying on HR to go out and own that. We need to be actively involved in the professional development of everyone on our team, but also our personal professional development as well. And then on the fringes here, I have benefit plan management. So when I was a Treasury practitioner, I had the opportunity, which was fantastic, to be involved in managing the folks that manage our pension assets, pension accounting, and then also as companies go more online, reputation and brand management is becoming more and more important, and this is where Treasury can play a key role as well. So it seems fairly daunting, but actually it's what makes Treasury exciting. That's why I'm still very engaged in the Treasury arena. When I was a practitioner, every day was different, and as I've evolved into enhancing the professional development of Treasury professionals, it's the same way. So there's always more to be done. There's always it's fantastic, and it's very interesting. So let's start to get into the different dimensions of Treasury tasks. So we'll start with timeless Treasury tasks. These are tasks that I see that are never going to change, and these are kind of the baseline. So these are skills that you need to have. But an important point here is the best practices in these timeless treasury tasks are constantly changing. So this kind of, in some sense, gets your foot in the door. These are your baseline skills, but you need to be best in class in these skills and then develop your skills in the other arenas that we'll talk about. So obviously, we looked at our previous diagram, cash management. So what's going on in what I'd call the subsets there? Bank account management. What we're seeing here is trends towards electronic bank account management, which to me is fantastic. When I was back in Treasury, everything was done by paper. Now we have systems that allow you to open bank accounts online and also to manage signatories online. When I was a Treasury practitioner, this was extremely difficult. So in terms of bank account management, I think ancillary to that with EBAM is also the governance and control and the ability to do reporting on those bank accounts and those signatories, tighten up that control, especially if you are a global business. It's invaluable the amount of time that you can save. If you've ever tried to open bank accounts in foreign countries, whether you're the U.S. opening another country or if you're in another country opening bank account in the U.S., the documentation back and forth can be painful, but EBAM can really help on that. Visibility of cash is king. If you can't see it, you can't management. So we're seeing a lot of developments in terms of treasury management systems. Back in the day, even before my time, we had bulky treasury workstations, which required hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment. And now we've got some online treasury management systems / solutions, and companies of all sizes are able to get visibility of cash in terms of bank accounts, even to the point where you can have instant access to your balances, movement of funds. So you're really able to unlock the strategic value of cash, and this is just amazing. Back in the day when I was in Treasury, we used to have to negotiate bank account reporting with each and every bank, work with MT 940 transactions. Now there's a lot of providers out there that you can look at that are cost effective. They have applications where they pull all that information for you. They have access to networks such as Swift, and you can access Swift yourself or Swift Lite, but there's a lot more TMS systems out there that can take on that for you and manage that. And then, of course, next step is movement of funds, control of cash. When I was in Treasury, I had a huge key ring of all these tokens, which was great. But now these treasury management systems take some of that security. You can log in one single sign-on and you can move funds across the globe. You can also get your positions by currency, invaluable in terms of managing cash, especially if you have FX exposures that you're trying to manage. And along all this is the information data that we have. Cash forecasting, that's never going to change. It's going to be a responsibility of ours, but that visibility of cash is critical in the movement of funds with that bank account ability. The bank account transaction ability is awesome. And then in terms, we talked about treasury technology. So as you might move to these cloud-based systems, treasury management systems, you'll be able to take more control over that technology. Just a note, of course, you need to right-size that for your company's needs. You can get a comprehensive solution that does everything that you could ever want by one provider, or you can take what I call a best-in-breed approach. You can take a technology solution that just does cash management. Then you can get another one that does FX risk management. Then you can do another one that does some other dimension of treasury, and all these will communicate with each other if they are cloud-based applications. So the big point here is that in terms of cash management, if you haven't looked at a treasury management system, it's something that you really want to take a look at, and it can absolutely change your life. For me, I used to spend probably an hour creating our daily cash position and daily cash forecast every day. And if I would have had one of these systems, that would have been done before I even walked in the door in the morning. In terms of another timeless treasury task, we have relationship management. Of course, key is our relationship with our banks and our providers of credit. This is what really allows us to fund the activities of our business. And in terms of managing those bank relationships, ancillary to that is, of course, managing the fee income across our banks if they're going to provide us credit. So how do we do that? Alongside that, bank treasury services vendor relationships. If you're involved in benefit plan management or short-term investment management, you have those relationships to manage. And then, of course, you have your internal relationships up and down the ladder in treasury. And also across the enterprise as you're involved in various areas, especially as we branch out into FP&A, and as we get more involved in risk management, those are relationships that are more important. So cash management, always have to be on top of our game there. What are the components there? We have to have effective bank account management, visibility, control of cash. We have to be able to deliver cash forecasts, which is accurate for the needs of our company, how we're using that. And then we have to be able to manage the technology relative to cash management. And then for relationship management, we have to have not only build the relationships, but have the tools as well. So there are actually tools out there that facilitate this, what I call interactive relationship management. Some of the tools have chat features where we can chat in real time, internally and externally. So you want to, whenever you're looking at technology, you want to make sure that you take a look at the functionality that enables collaboration within and beyond the walls of your company. And then, of course, professional development is something that's not going to go away. You have to take as much ownership of that as possible on a personal level. And if you're a manager, you should have joint ownership of that with those that work on your staff. I think we're starting to see much more of an emphasis, again, on human capital development, which I think is great. I was sorry to see that really take a big decline, but I think we're back in the right direction. So again, you want to look at personal, yourself, and then your personnel. So these things are things that are never going to go away. These are the baseline. And you can actually create professional competitive advantage in these areas as well as the other areas that we'll talk about. So now let's transition into trends in these areas. I spoke to these at a higher level. So again, just to give you some specifics, some takeaways of what I just talked about: bank account management, EBAM, electronic bank account analysis. I didn't really touch on that yet. This gives you a way to monitor and effectively manage your bank account fees. What I used to do is I used to have to look at all these paper statements and look for areas where we were being overcharged. And each and every month, shockingly enough, I found areas where we were being charged too much. So you want to be able to benchmark your fees, and now you can do that more easily given these electronic bank account analysis statements. You can leverage the AFP service codes. They now have AFP global service codes. So especially if you're a bigger company and you have hundreds of bank accounts, you want to look at investing on how to benchmark those fees and manage those fees and collaborate with your providers so you can get those bank account fees put into service codes. And what you need to watch out for is the bundling of services. So that's where fees can be hidden. What I used to do as a best practice every year, I would make my relationship manager come in and we would go line by line with my bank accounts. It took hours, even a few days, but I think that's just a best practice to benchmark your fees. And if someone's not willing to do that, you need to look at changing your bank. In terms of visibility and movement of funds, I talked about Swift Lite, and these cloud-based TMS systems. In terms of cash forecasting, we're starting to see companies even drive compensation on forecasting accuracy. You can be penalized for being off, but you can gain some more compensation by being on. And then more and more folks are taking an enterprise approach instead of that siloed approach in terms of just being in treasury. If AP and AR doesn't fall within treasury, sometimes there's silos there. And my preference is to have AP and AR go up through treasury, and you have that direct control and access. But you definitely need to have an enterprise approach. The good news is that the connectivity of these systems allows that to be possible. So in these TMS systems, you can import data, live data from your ERP system, so you can get those. You can get real-time updates in terms of actuals, in terms of spending and payables that are going to come in. And this really enables a really awesome way to optimize working capital. And in terms of treasury technology, again, I'll talk about cloud computing. I talked about that. Software as a service-based applications. So these are trends that I'm seeing. If you don't recognize any of the terms up here, you might want to just we'll talk about how to get resources and get yourself up to speed, especially in terms of the TMS systems. I think there's a lot of webinars out there. There's also a lot of just articles on TMS, and you look at research firms, independent firms like Gartner are a good place to get those about as unbiased as possible assessments, and also you can get those by connecting with your professional peers as well. In terms of relationship management trends, we talked about this a little bit. You have more teamwork, interdepartmental, and overwhelmed colleagues require more support. Especially if you are a manager, you need to be able to read your employees and see if they've got too much on their plate. You need to be very careful not to make your employees drink from a fire hose. So that's very key. It's hard to do. You have to develop relationships across your department, and sometimes you need to ask someone else, hey, how's John doing? He looks a little bit overwhelmed. Is there something we can do to help him out? But you want to go directly to your employees and say every so often and say, is there something that I can do to be more helpful to you, more resources we can give you? And sometimes it's just a matter of you can tell when someone needs a day off. So you got to be careful how to do that. You don't want to send the wrong message, but at the end of the day, you have to say, John, you've been working really hard. You've been doing a great job. I think it might be a good idea. What do you think about just taking a day off to recharge your batteries? A fantastic idea. If you can work with HR and get someone an extra day off, I know it sounds hard, but it's worth it. And in terms of interdepartmental, again, we talked about more collaboration. You need to engage support, and you need to incentivize your colleagues. So if you're going to manage projects across the enterprise, you have to show your colleagues how it matters to them. So why does it matter? I'm going to help you improve XYZ. You need to formalize projects and sell to the stakeholders. And I talked about you need to actively manage inherent barriers to successful cross-departmental projects. Again, people, process, technology. In terms of relationships, it's people and process. So you have people that are going to be your advocates, people who want to be your adversaries. You want to turn into your advocates. And then there's other politics that you need to navigate as well. And in terms of processes, you need to be very sensitive to the processes that are in place. And if you're going to make changes, you need to show that you've done your homework. Okay, if we do this, I think this might change your processes. So actively engage people in those changes and get them to take ownership of that and make sure that you're aligned there. So when you can't just say, I'm going to adopt this system, this new solution, and then not be cognizant of the processes that it might change across departments. You want to make enemies real fast. Just do something of that manner and don't consider the impacts across the enterprise. And next time you need something from, let's say, AP or AR, they're not going to be very receptive. If you engage them up front, show them the benefit, tell them why they're doing this, how they're adding value across the enterprise, you will be amazed at how many new friends that you have across the enterprise. In terms of your personal professional development, you need to actively manage your professional value proposition. That's a requirement for career success. Passive professional development, I think that's no longer an option. I think people need to invest and develop and maintaining an online brand that is better than your peers. That's another topic for another course, but I would call that your online brand. Talk about how to position yourself on LinkedIn, be involved with organizations like the Association for Financial Professionals. How do you get yourself on Google searches? How do you convey your thought leadership? Along those lines, leveraging social media is critical. And then finally, we'll talk about this a little later. How do you obtain access to the professional resources you need with less support from your employer? And we'll talk about how to be creative and assessing the people and tools you need to be successful. Assessing the people you need, it can come down to involvement in professional associations. And my key resource in that area is connecting with people on LinkedIn in order to develop and maintain the network that I need for my professional success. In terms of your personnel, every employee needs to be best in class. You need to make sure you have a team of A players they might have different skills, and you want them to have different skills on some level. You want to have that portfolio, but everyone needs to be contributing to the team. You need to create departmental goals, and people need to have ownership in those departmental goals. My best piece of advice for you managers who are listening: hire people that are smarter than you. Don't be afraid. It's awesome. I always hire people that can teach me something, so it's a two-way street. Again, provide your employees with the tools who are able to teach you. What do you need to do your job better? They might be better. They might be an analytical guru. Good, make them even better. What do they need? And then they can teach you and also teach other employees across the enterprise. You need to provide them with an environment that is conducive to personal and professional success. Sorry, you have to be Dr. Phil a little bit. You have to know a little bit about the personal side. There's a line there, but you need to understand when something is going on with someone, the signals, what's going on with them. And the worst thing you can do is to give someone the fire hose when they're having a personal issue, which is easily detectable. And then along those lines, you need to know what makes your employees tick, and mitigate negative changes in behavior as soon as they're noticed. So it's not hard to notice someone as they're changing. I also do a lot of work with CFOs, and one CFO did a walk around every morning that he was in the office. At first, this may be perceived, people might not know what's going on, but once you explain that to them and you just make that round, spend 15, 20 minutes every morning, that way everyone knows that you're engaged. Just ask them what's going on. It's not a threat, and that way you build those relationships and that trust, and then you'll get that open and honest communication back to you that you need. You're always going to get some sort of filter because you're the boss, but you'll be amazed how much more information that you receive, and how much more collaborative that work environment is when everyone feels that they are engaged on a team, and they are measured on the departmental success as well as their personal contribution. So shifting now to emerging treasury tasks, and some of you may say, well, that's not really emerging, that's already timeless and then emerging, and I'm going to talk about it on the horizon. But at the end of the day, it's about introducing these dimensions of treasury success and making sure that you have a handle on those. So what I'm starting to see, it might be shifting from an emerging treasury task. Accounts payable ownership is coming back to treasury. So is accounts receivable, as I touched on before. We are taking more and more direct ownership of the cash conversion cycle, which is beautiful because we are judged on that, whether or not we own it or not. Treasury is the cash. If things are not going on effectively in terms of cash, we're not getting money in, how the efficiency of payments, it may lie in accounting, but ultimately the responsibility is going to come over to us in treasury. Talked about financial planning and analysis becoming more and more common in treasury, and one indicator of this is the Association for Financial Professionals actually has a FP&A certification in treasury. We have the knowledge. We are seen as, in some source, the resource, right, for information across enterprise, and we have analytical skills. So FP&A is coming to treasury. We should own this all day long, because if you're involved in that FP&A, you are getting a strategic seat at the table at some point. We're seeing more and more risk management leadership. Of course, the definition of that has changed. When I was in treasury, that for the most part meant financial risk management, currency risk management, and insurance, and that was it. Of course, there's much more to enterprise risk management, which we'll talk about a little bit later, not too much more in a further course, but taking more and more ownership of that risk management. Part of that is the systems that we have. So are we able to identify current and emerging risk exposures? Are we able to quantify those on some level? And how do we manage those? And how are they interrelated? So we can have interest rate risk, financial risk that can translate into operational risk. So how do we mitigate those? And also an emerging area is cyber data security risk, which is also key. So all these things fit together, and Treasury is in the unique position of having probably the most direct visibility across the enterprise into each of those areas that impact these risk exposures. Related to that, governance. A lot of times we are responsible for capital structure and making sure things are done, and working a lot with internal audit, and then of course compliance, and then investor relations is somewhere that we are becoming more and more involved in terms of managing relationships with analysts and probably participating and preparing our CFO for analyst calls and then mergers and acquisitions. Again, we have that enterprise-wide view. When I was in Treasury, I had the opportunity to be more and more involved in M&A. So those are opportunities that we should definitely take advantage of. So what are some of the trends? We talked about this. The cash conversion cycle, we are looking to own more and more of that cycle, especially on the right side. So we need to help facilitate that supplier relationship management and that customer relationship management. So the Treasury professional should be the trusted advisor that sits in the middle and facilitates those communications internally and externally, and helps provide that 360 view of the customer and the supplier. So accounts payable, again, I think it's coming home to Treasury. If you haven't seen this yet, AP automation is a huge hot area. So there's a lot of applications out there that can really offer tremendous value. We have online bill payment. We have active online account management with suppliers. A lot of these are a function of the AP automation. We have more active counterparty risk management. Some of these things are old, but they're coming back to us directly. Global purchase cards, global payroll cards, international ACH, SEPA initiatives. We need to be aware of these things. If we're not directly managing AP, we need to make sure that we are leveraging these vehicles in collaboration with our accounting manager, chief accounting officer. And then if we take a look, accounts receivable, again, that's coming home. We're finally getting more remittance detail on wire transfers, cash application. Oh, we've all been there. Still difficult, but it's so much easier than when I was back in Treasury in the day. There's more electronic payment receipt vehicles. We're looking at more strategic interchange fee management. In terms of managing card fees, this can be a huge area of opportunity for most companies. Take credit cards, especially those of you in the retail industry. We have remote deposit capture, and we have mobile e-commerce applications. So Treasury's coming home. These are some of the trends. These are some of the things that you need to make sure your company is taking advantage of, and possibly take ownership of a project in these areas as well. FP&A. I'm going to keep mentioning cloud-based applications. The entire paradigm of FP&A has changed with the cloud-based applications. We're moving away from static budgeting and planning. We're moving away from the main vehicle being Excel, advanced scenario analysis. Again, FP&A technology is the topic of another course. I'll tell you about how to get resources in those areas. And then again, no department knows the dimensions of a company better than Treasury, and Treasury should own the role of data dietitians. So we see all this hoopla about big data. Well, who cares, right? Is it something that you need? Is it something that's going to improve decisions? You need to keep it simple in some sense of the data that you need. What are the key drivers of our company value? Okay, how do we measure those with metrics? How do we make those connections between metrics going up and down? Okay, those impact my drivers impact our shareholder value. Boom, what data do we need? We don't need 50 gazillion lines of data, dumping it into a application, which is now much more affordable. What does that spit out? Who cares? Where is it coming from? What's the quality of the data? What's it used for? So we need to play that role of data dietitian. And then FP&A, Treasury staff is having more relationships across departmental lines. And then risk management, we're taking more and more ownership of that. Risk insurance probably falls in your area. Things that are on the horizon here, E&O policies, global property and casualty, having that centralized. And then something that I should have up here is cyber risk policies. You need to be careful on cyber risk policies, but it's something that you want to take a look at to help mitigate those risks. You want to look at those exclusions there. FC, Foreign Corruptions Practices Act compliance. You want to make sure that you have a handle on that. That's something, and especially if you're doing business across borders, Counterparty risk management, again, with the cloud-based applications, we're getting more measurement and visibility. And in terms of counterparty risk management, we need to look at all these sources. So the more we keep identifying potential risk exposures, suppliers, customers, bank, and anyone who drives a bottom line or interactions with anyone. So a lot of times technology facilitates this visibility. This visibility facilitates more productive relationships. Again, supplier relationship management, CRM, bank relationship management, consultant relationship management, whatever it is, whoever you interact with that impacts decisions that impact the bottom line, we need to make sure we understand any risk exposures that we face. And then in terms of moving towards ERM, we're getting more and more operational visibility. And I talked about big data, cost and revenue drivers, and managing governance and compliance, being more of a partner to the board of directors in terms of governance, that visibility, what that needs to be, and that compliance, and how to best automate that governance and compliance. So again, solutions are out there in terms of compliance. This is kind of an ancillary example, but if you look at something as what seems as simple as travel and entertainment expense management, you'd be shocked at the amount of companies that don't have a policy or enforce compliance. Well, that can be automated. What is that a risk of? Well, that's a risk of money just flying out the door that doesn't need to fly out the door because people are just wasting company funds. And you can actually automate compliance with your T&E policy through software that's used to process T&E reports. So you can take that same technology and approach to other areas where there's cost leakage and revenue leakage, and use automation to ensure. You have to have the policies in place, but you can ensure compliance with your governance regulations and in compliance your internal policies, but also your regulatory compliance as well. M&A, treasury, this is fun, competitive business intelligence. We can get involved in business valuation, due diligence management. What is it that we need to know up front to understand the business that we're going to acquire? What are the things, risk exposures? What are the areas of opportunity? What are we getting ourselves into? We need to understand that, and that can impact the price that we want to pay. Acquisition integration management, that can be pretty dicey on the risk management side. So those are areas where I had the opportunity to be involved. So what insurance policies does the company we're acquiring have? What kind of fraud protection do they have on payments? What's their cyber policy? What are their ERP systems? We look at their E&O policies. Again, we want to look at how their coverages fit into ours, investor relationships, analyst calls, analyst relationships, and you can also get involved in your company's annual proxy if you are a publicly traded corporation. If we look at Treasury task on the horizon, I think this is coming to Treasury as well. You have legal risk management. We touched on online brand management, reputation risk management. A piece of reputation risk management is that online brand management. We talked a little bit about IT services management, and then benefit plan management, being more and more closely aligned with human resources. In terms of Treasury, oftentimes the CFO is on the benefits plan committee, but the CFO is often too busy to be actively involved and hands-on, and oftentimes that responsibility falls down through Treasury, and if not, you should own that responsibility. And for many companies, it is a significant liability, and so it's really good to have yourself involved, and there's risk exposures there, and even in terms of, even if you only have 401k plans, in terms of employee education, if you're involved in managing the administrator of your plan, the record keeper, that could be a huge source of risk exposure, and so you want to make sure that you get involved on that if you have the opportunity. So again, that seems like an awful lot, but those are all areas. The good news is those are always areas of improvement, but those are areas where you can set yourself apart from your peers. Want to make sure that you are staying on top of your game. We'll talk about some resources to do that. So again, we talked about all these dimensions. So how do we possibly understand how to ensure that we are up to speed? Well, you need to do a gap analysis. You need to look at, okay, what are the relevant skills in each of these dimensions? What is my skill set, and where do I need to be? And then kind of look at, okay, next step is what resources do I need to fill those gaps? So develop, whether on your personal level or team level, you need to develop a list of gaps in the professional resources you currently have at your disposal and need to meet and exceed your departmental or personal goals. So you want to look at these gap analysis. You may actually have internal resources, HR programs where you can fill these gaps, especially if you have gaps or your team has gaps in terms of soft skills, or maybe an area that someone else in your company is an expert. You don't want to leverage Excel too much, but maybe you have an Excel guru that you can leverage who works in another department. So what you want to start to look at that gap analysis is, okay, what are my gap in terms of people, processes, and technology, or on a departmental level? What are my gaps in people, technology, process, people, personal or departmental? Who do you need to get on board? In a manager level, do you need to redeploy people or engage new internal or external people to get you where you want to be and keep you there? So if you're looking to fill a gap analysis on a departmental level, do I want to train someone up? Do I want to hire someone? Or do I want to just bring a consultant in and have them teach my whole treasury team how to do better at XYZ? And I think the opportunity to my personal preference is to train people up and not just hire in. Now, if it's a really, really specialized skill and the person has a lot of other great skills, yeah, they might be a great addition to the team. But I think in the past, people have a knee-jerk reaction to hire in. But again, we need to look at investing in human capital, and we need to look at investing in possibly having a consultant come in for lunch, 2 hours a day, whatever that might be, and get your staff up to speed. A lot of times there's that initial learning curve, and your folks can get up that learning curve without hiring someone who needs to do that every single day. It's not a cost, it's not a benefit to your company in terms of the cost. In terms of technology, what systems do you might need to communicate better? Do you have access to the software you need, the upgrades you need, the functionality that I need? I need to be able to run Monte Carlo simulations. Well, most people don't. Maybe you do. If you do, okay, how do you, what do you need to purchase? How do I couch that? How do I win that investment in that? For processes, look at what existing processes and procedures and policies you need to revise. Do you need new ones with the adoption of new technology? So a lot of times you could see something as a gap, but the reason that the gap exists is because your processes are competing with each other, they're inefficient, and if you're just looking in terms to fill an identified gap, you want to look at, okay, how are the associated processes with this? Let's say I need to get better at cash application. Okay, what processes do I need to change in order to make that happen? What technology do I need to make that happen? So again, it seems like a cumbersome exercise. It is worth it. It's something that once you have that, it provides a benchmark for your success, and you can continue to use that, and you can use this gap analysis to not only drive your personal professional development, but your departmental professional development as well. And you also want to correlate filling those gaps, and okay, how does that impact the value that's offered by Treasury? How does that impact the bottom line for my company? So if you can make those associations, it's easier to sell that if you need to go to the CFO or the CEO and ask for some sort of investment. You can say, okay, our department needs to be better at this, and this is what we're going to deliver based on this. And then if you win that investment, then you follow up and say, this is my benchmark to this, and keep reporting that up to ensure that, okay, I ask you for money, this is what we're going to get out of it. And the next time you want more money, they're going to say, whatever you need, because you're showing that you understand the value in that and showing that value. Now, I keep talking about this, but I want to, again, talk about inherent barriers of Treasury success. A lot of times, if you can identify these, you can remove those up front. So in terms of, in general, people, again, individuals who affect productivity, and sometimes it's just people don't understand what they're doing and or don't care. So we need to identify those people. A lot of times people across departments don't understand the value in what they're doing and the problems that the inefficiencies in what they might do might impact productivity. And that can be also within your department as well. Lack of support from executives. So that can be an inherent barrier into the importance of your departmental goals and responsibilities. So you want to make sure that those up the ladder are aligned with your goals, And the easiest way to get support for those goals is to tie them to your company goals. If they aren't being communicated to you, you need to make that happen. And you need to align your goals and responsibilities with those strategic initiatives of your company each and every year. And as those change, you need to make sure that your departmental goals are dynamic enough to evolve with those and make sure that alignment stays. And now, of course, we always have this issue: don't play well with others. We need to look at that, look at those situations. We want to look at how we can mitigate those. Are they worth mitigating? If it's just a person that just has problems playing well with others, I would caution you, just don't throw that person out the door. They may not be aware of it. And if they want concrete examples, just do that. And if they don't want to hear those, then you can let them out the door. But a lot of times you need to teach people how to get along with others. That's just the way it is. And a lot of times, unfortunately, your most productive people, and sometimes who have your highest IQ people, sometimes those people, they have problems interacting with others. And it's not that they can't do it, it's just they've never had to do it. They've never thought about what they're doing and why. In terms of processes, we talked about this a little bit. Processes, by their very design, facilitate untimely and inaccurate data. You got to remove those, and then processes can actually compete against each other. In terms of technology, inherent barriers, systems that don't communicate with each other, i.e. Excel, systems that facilitate more than one version of the truth. In terms of data, not trying to bash on Excel, that's a limitation of Excel. Access to no system that allows direct collaboration between business colleagues. A lot of the emerging cloud-based applications allow this. Systems do not meet data needs in terms of timeliness and technology. And this is my thing that I've said maybe 10 years ago. It's still the case. Companies still they have technology that dictates business practices instead of supporting business agility. So that's the worst case scenario. If technology is ever dictating a business practice, you need to do whatever you need to do to get that changed. In today's environment, which is more and more uncertain, given geopolitical conditions and what those might bring, regulations, everything that's going on, you need to have business agility. So you need to have the ability to and not only react but also anticipate what's going on in the marketplace. And a lot of times technology enables that. So you want to get as much information as possible, quality information, as timely as possible, and that enables your business agility in order to not to face challenges, but also turn those into opportunities. So a lot of times companies will look at risk as, oh no, risk is an aversion. Well, oftentimes, if understood in the right way, risk can actually be an opportunity for market leadership. Volatility is not necessarily a bad thing. So in terms of acquiring the treasury resources that you need or your company needs, so we'll talk a little bit about business case. You need to define the lay of the land in terms of a project, who's going to be impacted, the relevant dynamics, people, process, technology. You need to know your constituency, who your project would impact, and how. Who do I need to get approval to get this done? Invite participation, buy in, pay special attention to those who will offer you the most resistance, and convert them into your champions. Invaluable. You need to offer multiple solutions, remove any perception of bias in terms of a solution provider. You need to define what success is and communicate it. Create goals that define ROI relative to your projects. Then you have to have metrics you can monitor. Communicate how you're going to report to all those who are vested and will approve your company's investment in your budget. People that are involved in your project, show them the changes that they are making, the pain that they've gone through, that they are going through. How is that delivering value to the company? And you need to present your business case with passion and confidence. I hold a meeting with all those vested in a project, in addition to those who need to approve it, and formally present my business case. I look at this as a shareholders meeting, and I need to convince my shareholders to invest in my project. So I want to look them in the eye. I want to look my naysayers in the eye. I want to let them air air out what they have to air out before we get started, and I'm going to be prepared because I know who's going to be impacted. I know how. I know the objections that are going to come up. One of the first things I'm going to do in defining my business case or my presentation is I'm going to disarm all of the potential roadblocks that people are going to try and throw in front of me. I'm going to research that. I'm going to talk to the people that need to be talked to in there. I'm going to engage the people that might throw them up, and that's going to be out the window. Huge inherent barrier. You need to define roles and responsibilities, the project roles, responsibilities, and you also need to establish accountability with each stakeholder. So that joint accountability. So part of my project is improving DSO by XYZ. Boom. Accounts payable. You are going to do XYZ. You own this. Boom. That's how the project's going to work. And you have to define how the projects fit together in each role that they play in successful execution. So again, getting the resources your team needs, if it requires company investment, communicating the business case is just as important as creating it, but you also have to develop the ability to create the business case and put hard numbers behind those benefits. So here could be the most valuable part of my presentation. I believe in places where people, there's a lot of gold out there and resources that you can acquire at no cost. So in my treasury career, connecting and networking with peers face to face, if possible, face the same challenges you face in their career. So I'm doing a P card project in manufacturing. I meet someone else in manufacturing that's done a P card. They tell me all the things. I get to talk to their administrator. There's nothing more valuable than that, in my opinion. Ways to do that: professional associations, AFP, FEI, as far as online, LinkedIn. There are communities like Performative. You can go to professional seminars. You can engage treasury consulting firms and your treasury services providers. One important note here: don't be afraid to ask your treasury consulting firms and treasury services providers if they have any clients that they have on their rosters that have faced the same challenges that you face. It may even be on an unrelated project. So your treasury consulting firm may be giving you FX consulting while you might be doing a P card project. You might say, hey, can you ask someone else at your firm? I want to connect with someone that did a big P card project. They should be willing to do that. And again, those connections are invaluable. Don't be afraid to ask your consulting partners and your treasury services providers to share their connections with their customers with you. They should be more than willing to do that. In terms of professional development resources, in terms of career, free webinars from recruiters, professional associations, we have all these education academies. Performative Academy is now transformed to Illumio. We have job boards. We have LinkedIn groups. We also have emerging resources such as treasuryjobs.com that is really making a mark in this space, and they are offering not only career management resources, but resources related to those treasury dimensions that we have mentioned throughout the presentation. Task-related resources, again, just some places that you need to look. And if you're going to pay, you need to ensure that you get an R&I for each resource you allocate your funds. There's a growing trend towards professional free resources. If you're going to look for a webinar, if you have to pay for it, I would say you can probably find something where you can get a free webinar. And the same thing in terms of content, you want to look at not only associations, but the conferences that they put on. Do things like a Google search, look on slideshare.net, look on YouTube. There's so much information out there. It is very exciting, and you'd be amazed. And especially in terms of a specific project, let's say you find a presentation at AFP conference. If you find the speaker, you'll be amazed how receptive the speaker is to your request to have a short conversation. The reason that most of us contribute to the treasury profession is we want to help others in our profession avoid the pains that we have gone through in delivering on projects that we have managed. So a lot to digest, but I'm not going to transform your whole treasury career from in probably less than an hour. I believe what I have done is I've given you a lot of ammunition to formalize your battle plan, given you the tools to drive your own career success and the success of your department, and to ask the right questions. And again, I've said this probably too many times, but I can't stress enough, there are so many resources out there to help you be a better treasury professional in terms of LinkedIn, free webinars, YouTube, SlideShare. So you should take advantage of those resources. So in terms of treasury success, create a dynamic battle plan. So you have to have a battle plan. We talked about that battle plan, but you have to be able, it has to be some flexibility in it. It's not like a budget. Here and I'm going to go from A to B. You have to be able to go off course, create course, make sure that you maintain that alignment with your career success, your department's career, your departmental goals with your company's strategic initiatives. If you are aligned with your company's strategic initiatives and your personal goals, then you are going to be in good shape. You want to identify your current, emerging, and future needs in terms of people, process, and technology, and you need to prioritize those in terms of ROI, hard dollar ROI, and how you're going to fill those gaps. Again, perform a gap analysis in each major area, devise a strategy for how to address each gap when closed offers a positive ROI, and then you want to look at effectively aligning people, process, and technology in all areas of treasury success. In closing, I would like to thank you for your time in taking this course, and I am more than happy to connect with you and discuss this topic or any other topics related to treasury success. My contact information is here on this final slide, and I would welcome a LinkedIn invitation from you. Thank you very much for your valuable time.